Welcome to Americana, your top destination for the latest updates on the 2024 presidential election. I'm your moderator, Raquel Herring, here with our Democratic host, Shakia Moore, and our Republican host, Willie Montague. It's officially the eve of Election Day, and the race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is neck and neck. Let's dive into today's campaign highlights and catch up on everything happening on the trail. Former President Donald Trump launched a series of rallies with an energized crowd in Raleigh, North Carolina, confidently stating, "With North Carolina, I've always gotten there," and declaring it's ours to lose. Willie, Trump's confidence speaks volumes, but is it enough to secure a win in North Carolina on Election Day?
Well, I say this, I was born and raised in the beautiful state of North Carolina, and I absolutely believe that the confidence is sure. Surprisingly enough, I know there's a lot of controversy going on in North Carolina, but I do know outside of that controversy that North Carolina overall, I know people consider it swing, but when I got my Republican start from North Carolina, okay. So I think they'll pull through for Donald Trump.
Okay. Shakia?
Obviously, I think the opposite.
Yes.
So as Willie just mentioned, there is a ton of controversy that's happening in North Carolina. We obviously know about Mark Robinson, who is the gubernatorial candidate for the state of North Carolina. Outside of his porn debut, in addition to that, let's not forget how Donald Trump caused a lot of disinformation regarding the hurricane that happened, that caused aid to pause because there was a mob of militia-like folks roaming the streets that threatened some of the FEMA workers. And so because of that, North Carolinians they couldn't get the aid that they needed during the hurricane. So, you know, I'm just looking forward to seeing this new wave of freedom that hits North Carolina, and we'll see how that turns out.
Okay. Former President Bill Clinton rallied with Democratic voters in this historic town of Eatonville on Sunday to support Kamala Harris's path to the Oval Office. Take a look.
We can win everywhere. I'm going to North Georgia when I leave you. Because I don't believe we should be divided by race or gender or anything else. I think what we have in common is more important. But you got to show up. So
now Harris herself is making a final push across key states with a focus on Pennsylvania and its 19 critical electoral votes. She's set to visit working class areas like Allentown and cap off with a Philadelphia rally featuring Lady Gaga and Oprah Winfrey. Shakia, how do you feel about these high profile appearances? And do you think it's enough to give Harris the momentum she needs to secure a win?
Well, we've seen throughout her campaign a number of high-profile individuals show up and show support, whether they were actors or actresses, celebrity, Hollywood singers, you know, all the above. Mm-hmm. My only thing is I hope those appearances also turn people to appear out to the voting polls tomorrow. And so we know that 70% of registered voters typically show up during the presidential election.
Oh, 70%?
Yep, 70% of registered voters. So even less than that show up during midterms. So hopefully the 70 plus, because I'm assuming it's going to be more than 70%, will show up tomorrow to the polls if they haven't already cast their ballots.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Willie!
God, it's so interesting. You know, showing up with people like Bill Clinton, let's not get into scandals with Bill Clinton.
Don't you start.
And then showing up with Lady Gaga. I mean, VP Harris shows up to church on Sunday with a devil worshiper on Monday. It's quite interesting. Oprah Winfrey also know high priestesses of all things. So it's interesting that these high profile people, now get this, they've always spoken about President Trump, he's gone. He's all for the wealthy people. Everyone that's on the stage are millionaires and billionaires, and no one has yet to confront the fact that those people would benefit from the same things that President Trump would offer. But y'all go ahead and go off out there in the Democrat world, and you win your race in those areas with these high-profile
We certainly will. I look forward tomorrow, and we may not even know who the winner of the election will be tomorrow, but I do look forward to calling her Madam President of the United States. So despite what Willie just had to say about all of the hoopla that the Democratic Party are doing regarding Bill Clinton, and he is Uncle Bill to me, he was amazing. I actually covered that story. But just to see the sea of folks who actually showed up to that rally who are ready for a change, I think America is ready for a woman president. We'll see that tomorrow.
Yeah, they've been pandered to. That's why Bill Clinton was in Eatonville. They've been pandered to. And the Democrats is the reason why Eatonville has failed all these years, but we won't get into that.
We don't have to today.
Not today.
You can count on us to keep you up to date with the latest campaign trail updates. Now let's move on to political programs. Let's dive into election integrity. Okay? Election integrity refers to the assurance that an electoral process is conducted fairly, transparently, and accurately so that the results reflect the true will of the voters. Donald Trump is alleging that the 2024 presidential election is being stolen from him. He's pointed to isolated voting issues and has made unfounded claims about fraud in mail-in ballots, early voting, and non-citizen participation to cast doubt in the election's legitimacy if he loses. Willie, these are some strong allegations. So what's your take on it, please?
Let me just say this, because this is week whatever of me having to come to the calls. Election integrity is 100% something that needs to be, and this is not just It's interesting that election integrity only became something that people thought was popular during President Trump's time. I have accounts of people who are on the Democrat side who also encountered where there was fraudulent activity going on at the ballot, at the polls, and when they went back and researched and see what was happening to the ballots. So this is not a Republican issue, but what I would say is election integrity, we need it across the board. Illegals should not be voting, and we should make sure to secure mail-in ballots, also make sure that we have proper poll workers. There are some places that won't even let certain people show up to, but you'll call it voter suppression, show up to these polls because we're wanting to watch and make sure, which is something that should be part of the process to make sure that my vote actually counts. So I think election integrity is very important. It's not just a Republican issue. It's Democrats, because I've heard from Democrats that also have had election integrity issues in their races as well.
Okay. Kia.
Ooh, child. Here we go, Willie. We're on to a good start on this Monday afternoon, huh? So I would have to agree with him on that. Election protection goes both ways, that it should be fair, it should be transparent, and it should be done in a legal manner. However, what we've seen since the 2020 election with the Republican then President Trump, we've seen a number of fear tactics that have really stormed this country that allows people to think that the democracy that we now know is being tampered with. So my question and what my train of thought is, for those who are currently in office who pose as a Republican, why not question the validity of your winning selection into office? Like, is it only when you lose an election is when you have a problem with the process that's in place? And so mail-in ballots, at one point, Donald Trump didn't want folks to use that as an option. Now he's flipped the script and said, yes, do your mail-in ballots. But what we've seen over these last few weeks during early voting is that folks have also put bombs and different fire tactics inside of the drop-in ballot boxes. So it's a lot of fear mongering going on, and it is voter suppression, whether you want to admit it or not. There are polling places that folks who are casting their ballot, they are either being taunted by people who are standing within a few hundred feet. Most people aren't even allowed to get bottles of water anymore if they're standing in line. So there's different fear tactics that have actually prevented people from voting, and mostly people of color have suffered at the hands of that.
Well, let me just say this about this bottled water, voter suppression in the line. Can't get that. When you go to work or you go to lunch or you carry your kids, you give them a lunchbox, right? And so it's not saying that you cannot have these things in a line. Once you get in line, they're saying there is boundaries at voting locations. And if you know you're going to be in a line, particularly in races like this, why don't you bring those items that you need? If you know every year I'm going to be thirsty, bring your bottle of water, bring your snack. Why call it voter suppression? Because your lack of responsibility to bring something that you need to be able to do. That has nothing to do with the state. You need to be responsible for you standing in the line. No, it's not inconsiderate.
So you tell me that a senior citizen who is willing to get up out of their home, either catch a ride or have one of their nursing aides take them to the voting polls, has to bring a lunchbox in order to cast their ballot?
What else do you think is supposed to happen? Tell me how. So the voting people, the workers, are supposed to come out of the place and come hand water.
No.
It's nothing to do with elderly. It's about the common sense of the matter.
And you don't have any.
To what extent do you
don't have any?
All right, y'all. To what extent do you believe the voter ID laws enhance election integrity, and do they disproportionately affect certain demographics?
I'll give that to Willie, since he thinks bottles of water is also a fear tactic.
Willie?
What was the question?
Do you think voter ID... Yes. Okay. Oh, boy. Well, now I got to wrap and go to commercial. Look at y'all. See?
Get out of here.
Okay. Coming up next, find out what's been trending on social media, and we have the latest poll. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We're live. Oh, go ahead, Raquel. We got 46.
Wait. If you're just tuning in, you are watching Americana, the platform where we serve you the latest updates on the 2024 presidential election. I'm your moderator, Raquel Herring, joined by our Democratic host, Shakir Moore,
Hey.
and our Republican host, Willie Montague. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Stay tuned to see what's trending on social media and catch up on the latest polls. Welcome back to Americana. The 2024 presidential election has been trending across all social media platforms. Let's take a look at some of the most recent social media updates. Now, before the break, we covered election integrity. In a recent 60 Minutes episode, Scott Pelley asked an election expert to present evidence debunking top voter fraud conspiracy theories. Take a look.
Look at some of the conspiracy theories of fraud. We'll take them one at a time. Bogus votes are electronically inserted into tabulation machines.
They're not connected to the internet. They are under strict physical chain of custody. It is really hard to get access to a physical machine and do anything to it. And even if there were some attempt to hack the machine, or probably more likely have some kind of malfunction of the machine, the audits would catch it.
Another of the conspiracy theories is that illegal immigrants are voting by the millions.
That is 100% false.
Now, Shakia, this breakdown is coming from an election expert. What's your response to Republicans who believe the election is legitimate, or isn't legitimate, if Trump loses?
I think if if the Republican Party is still carrying this lie 4 years later, at this point, they're just as delusional as Donald Trump. And I also just want to make a note to what the gentleman said on the video, the expert. He mentioned that illegals are actually voting. That is mis and disinformation. Illegals are not allowed to vote in this country until they've done their due diligence in becoming a citizen. However, they're able to pay taxes, which last year they paid over $96.7 billion in taxes, but yet they're not able to vote. So let's just be clear about what immigrants can and cannot do. And I think, you know, if a Republican is still carrying on this lie after years, it's insane at this point.
You know, it's very interesting what he said about the electronic portion. Back in August in the state of Florida during the primary, there's a system called the VR system, and several county election boards are actually on that system, and those systems actually went down. And so whether the question is about someone being able to tap in or put a chip in, they are attached to computers. This is someone, I've spoken to someone about this, and it was proven, you can go back and research, that in August, during the primary election in the state of Florida, there were counties that had to pause the process of the election because their system shut down. So it is attached to computers. Now, widespread, no, this is the issue that I have with this thing. Of course, it's not widespread, but there are states that need to be looked at that are a little outdated than some other places. That's why it takes some state longer to get the results back than some states that are more on an electronic standpoint. So I think it's more of the issue about which states and what states has what. So I don't know if he's talking about the whole 50 states, which he cannot definitely think that the whole 50 states is just secure and that there's no possible way for things to be tampered with. I'm not saying there's across the board some wide range of voter fraud, but there is possible ways to do it. And one of the ways is as the Democrats are setting things on fire and throwing them into the woods.
Now, why would we do that to our own party? That's just insane. That's also part of the mis and disinformation that the Republicans typically use. But do we have a moment to carry on with this really quickly? So to Willie's point about it not being widespread, I would have to agree with that. But there's a caveat. We see a lot of polling places that have issues with their technology or long lines in mostly rural or either Black and brown communities. And why is that? That's a fear tactic, not even a fear tactic. It's a part of voter suppression that we typically see in the South. And so for my colleague here to say that that's not a real thing, I really want us to just take the time to really ground ourselves in what voter suppression is and how it came to be.
Well, I'd like to know if Donald Trump does win, will he say that it's not legitimate? Will he want to go through this again?
Y'all coming another week. I want to help y'all. And I said this before, I do not work with the Trump campaign. I've said this over and over, but I will help the people who are listening for the first time.
Okay.
It has been mentioned several times from people who, because whether Trump wins or not, and he wants to fight back, it is Congress that has to solidify the actual votes, right? Solidify who wins.
The electoral and solidify who wins, okay.
The Republican side has already said that whoever wins, they will receive it, and that not one Republican said that they will not certify the votes, the election. And so to continue with this is where disinformation comes in, because we want to create articles of Trump. We can't help what Trump says, but as far as the Republicans that are in Congress that has to certify the election, they have already stated whoever wins, we are just going to certify, and that is a fact. And that's where I conclude on that.
Okay.
We're going to see.
Okay, now let's circle back to former President Bill Clinton, who surprised many by stating that the U.S. economy was stronger under Donald Trump, though he still urged Michigan voters to back Kamala Harris in the upcoming election. With early voting underway, both candidates are making a last-minute push in this critical state. Willie, talk about how Clinton's remarks on the economy could possibly impact voters' choice.
To be honest, I don't think it's going to do too much, but it's just very interesting that Bill Clinton would say that the economy was better under President Trump and then go and say vote for VP Harris. I just thought that was very interesting and amusing. But that's how they are, and he's a little loose also, with his decline in his health as well. So it may have been one of those situations. But I would thank him because I've said it over and over that the economy was better under President Trump. So thank you, Bill Clinton. I hope that his wife doesn't try to stuff him in a basement with Joe.
Oh, okay.
You always have to bring in a woman. I tell y'all Republicans are so insecure and intimidated by women.
Oh, I'm
it's
fine.
Crazy.
I'm secure.
But to add a little nugget of fact to what he just mentioned, yes, Bill Clinton did mention that the economy was a little stronger under Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. However, that is because the first 2 years of his succession, it was from President Barack Obama. So when he succeeded and inherited a strong economy, it tanked because of his lack of leadership with the COVID crisis. So let's just be clear. Yes, he did receive a strong economy. It was strong up to a certain point, and then it strongly declined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can trust that we will fill you in on the latest news and social media updates. And on that note, let's check in on the latest polls. As of November 4th, 2024, national polls show a tight race with Kamala Harris at 48% and Donald Trump at 46.9%, both within a 3% margin of error. Shakia, Election Day is officially tomorrow, and to this date, the race is just too close to call.
Ooh, y'all. It can't come quick enough.
Don't you know?
I think the entire nation is over receiving text messages, phone calls, all the unsolicited things. But it's important. Tomorrow's election will be historic on either end. We could have Kamala Harris, who would then be Madam President of the United States, and he would be former governor of what's his name? Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
I just had a little brain fart there. Felt like Biden for a second. But we're going to see a historic moment. And then if Donald Trump wins, we'll have a convicted felon who would take office, 2 times impeached president take office again. And so either way, we could see how this goes. But baby, I think we are all tired of this here election.
Yeah.
I have to agree with that. I think I know I'm definitely tired of the election. But I think that, and I know you're not gonna like this part, but I think that is the story of hope for those that understand overcoming something. You had, Noah that built the ark. You had Moses that crossed the Red Sea, and it was all, you overcome things. You had those that were in prison and those that was falsely claimed of things, but they rose to greatness. And President Trump is one who is rising out of the ashes.
Is that from his Bible? Which chapter from his Bible is that?
That's good.
I'll give you that.
You had to laugh, right?
I'll give you that one. So I just lost my whole computer. I'll give you that. Just go out and vote, please. Just go out and vote. Did you give the number? It was like 70% of people already voted, or was it?
Yeah.
So there's still undecided voters. So please just go vote. There's nothing else you can do after tomorrow. So, don't sit home. This is your opportunity to do something that is of your civic duties. And, no matter who you vote for, as I said last week, just research and make sure they're the right person for what you believe.
Right. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are locked in a tight race just one day before the general election, with a recent tip tracking poll showing each candidate at 48% support. Notably, 66% of voters remain undecided, indicating they could change their minds in the final hours. Willie, these undecided voters are literally holding the outcome of this election in their hands.
Yeah, as I just said, that,
Yes.
I think that you have to go out and you have to vote. And a lot of people now, everybody's not going to vote. There is a lot of voter apathy, but I can tell you that what I've seen across the board, that there are way more people that went out early voted this year than we have seen in times past. So I think that people are hungry for something different. So go vote.
Yes. The race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris has certainly kept us on our toes as Election Day approaches tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in to Americana. Join us right here weekdays at 7:30 p.m. Thanks for watching.
All right.
I got it freezing in here.
Show